I firmly believe, like, I don't know if I didn't have my social media following, if I would have been as much of a candidate to get in the Shark Racing car. And I know that I probably wouldn't have had as much of an opportunity to get in the Tarlton car because, I love the Tarltons. Like, Tommy didn't know who I was, though, but his son Tommy did from watching my videos.
Green flag in the air.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Hot Lap with Landman. Fresh off my second trip to Daytona. Excited to get going again here on another show this week. I have a great guest this week. This guy has made a name for himself and definitely earned everything he's got. Tanner Holmes is going to come on and join us today and talk a little bit about his past, how he got to where he is today, his current ride, and a lot of other great stuff about him. First of all, I just want to remind you, if you've got a moment, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button. Just helps me get more content out to you guys. And I appreciate all the support everyone has given me. Coming up on my 1-year anniversary here. So excited about that. But the more followers I can get, that would be great. So let's not wait around any longer. Let's get Tanner in here and let's talk to him a little bit about what he's got going. All right, so we got Tanner Holmes that joined us here. And Tanner, I know you've probably been busy traveling a little bit here early in the year. First of all, where are you sitting at today?
Yeah, so right now I'm coming from Southern Oregon, back home here for just a couple days before we leave for Las Vegas for the beginning of the high limit season. My first couple races, I've been traveling, so I've got the luxury of flying thousands of miles instead of driving thousands of miles. But now I'm about to join the tour life with my t-shirt trailer and stuff as we kind of come from this way and head down south, and then as the season goes on, we just get farther and farther away from home.
And that's something I was going to talk about a little bit later on here. But you're a hired gun now for the first time, full time, and that's got to be exciting for you also.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it's, you work towards just having any opportunity to race at this high of a level. We spent a lot of time running my own family's equipment, and I think, both are a little different, obviously driving for a team and then racing for your family. But no matter what, you just want it to be full time, no matter what that looked like. That was, what I was working towards. And it just so happened that it worked out that there was an open seat and now driving the 13 car. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to, a lot of new racetracks. I think getting into it, every driver knows that, there's a lot of highs and lows, coming. It's just part of it. Even the top guys experience that. So just a whole lot ahead of me. And yeah, just been doing everything I can to be prepared mentally, physically, all my equipment, even though I'm not taking care of race car stuff, but, my truck and my t-shirt trailer and, I got to get everything and just, those two things and get going on the road and be with the team and just everything that looks like.
I just wanted to real quick before I jump back to my normal type of doing my podcast. I was lucky enough to be down at Volusia for both go rounds also. And I don't know if it's just me, but it seemed to me like this second time back, the results for you were like 10 times better than the first time you guys were down there. And I don't know if you have any experience at Volusia or not in the past before you went down there this last time, but tell me if I'm right a little bit about that, about the first 3 races down there in early February compared to this last trip you just coming off of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what we talked about as a team. That's kind of what we expected. I think, you don't race during the off. I mean, I got to race a little bit during the off season, but still, I've been out of the seat for about 8 weeks going into Volusia, and that's the fastest you're going to go all year when you roll into Florida in February. So, I mean, you're ripping. I feel like the first night was a throwaway for us just because, again, never been to Volusia. You're going like 130 miles an hour. Like everything's just happening quick. You're kind of knocking the rust off. And, again, still hadn't ran a ton of nights with Buch Motorsports. Obviously, we're still early in our venture together. So, yeah, I mean, just, me learning their package. Their car's different than the cars I've driven before. Chassis, engine package, all that stuff, wings. I mean, it all kind of, plays together. So I felt like we got better every night during the February trip. And then we got better, during the last 2 nights. There was just consistent upward progress for us. So I think a lot of it was stuff was starting to slow down for me. I had a little bit more time to think, process, smoothing out some of my, at Volusia, you're going so quick, you can't move the steering wheel a lot. But also, I just think the car and me are working together better each night. And that's the goal, right? The top guys, they are one with their race car. They're not, they don't both have a different game plan. So I think a lot of it was that and just getting on the same page. And again, continuing to work with a new team.
Let's jump back a little bit. What I like to do with a lot of my guests is get a feel for how you got involved in the racing game. Obviously, you've chosen to make this a career now at this point
Yeah.
in your life. But I imagine growing up out on the northwest coast there, not a real hotbed for sprint car racing. Now it's not 100% zero either, but as a young lad, 3, 4, 5 years old, tell me when you started racing and what caught your attention that gave you this addiction to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has, an interesting way they got into the sport. For me, like I didn't have a lot of racing stuff around me. Both my parents weren't involved. My dad didn't race, my mom didn't race. No family members competed. They were probably like basic NASCAR fans at best, is what maybe attended a few shows, but like just again, just out of just to watch something as entertainment. And about when I was about 4, about turning 5, so it had been about 2008-ish, my family, my dad's, ran our family business for many years now and involved in the Southern Oregon area. And he happened to be doing work actually for a client, and the guy had a go-kart for sale. And it was evident, like he had seen it when he was scouting out the job and they were doing work, and got to talking to the guy. And it was actually one of my dad's friends that convinced him, like, hey, you should consider getting that for Tanner. Like maybe that would be something fun. And there was a local, we didn't even really know it, but there was they're called outlaw carts, go karts, but they got cages and wings and they look like a miniature sprint car almost, essentially. But there was a track not that far from where we lived. And so we ended up going out and watching one race, and then we ended up buying the go kart. And then we went out there and, again, knew absolutely nothing, just kind of made some friends as we went. And my dad didn't know how to work on a race car. And, I didn't realize it at the time, but I really respect my dad more and more as I got older, because I realized I would walk in and he'd be reading books on like how to set up race cars, learning about stagger and air pressure and cross weight and scaling and all this stuff. And he actually put in a lot of time when I was younger, as maybe not the first year, but as I started to get faster, he put in a lot of time to figure out how to set up the car, because that was his responsibility, and we were having fun doing it. We were kids, but we think both my parents were competitive, and I got that competitiveness probably from them. So we wanted to go win. So anyway, I got started when I was 5, about 2008, 2009, just at our local track. And I think that I never had maybe a clear path on, like, because my dad wasn't necessarily a sprint car driver, like, hey, I want to go race sprint cars. We just knew that that could be an option. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think when I was younger, I really had my eyes more focused on NASCAR. And then as I got older, I realized that there was a real opportunity to get in, a 360 or maybe a 410 one day. Just had to work extremely hard at it. So, yeah, raced outlaw carts all growing up. And, essentially 5 or 10 races our first year turns into 15, and then to 20, and then to 30. And, even when I was younger, we were probably racing almost 30 or 40 times a year in outlaw carts just up and down the West Coast, and even, traveling some of the country at, some of my younger ages.
Tell me a little bit about the family business too, if you don't mind, just to give us an idea of what your parents have going these days.
Yeah, so, my dad was involved in, trucking and hauling of material in our, local area. So, essentially, all throughout Southern Oregon, like, they have, like, they have the material, and then they also will haul it and stuff. And my dad started as just, like, kind of a one-man show when he was, in his 20s, and that's still what he does to this day, as he's, probably heading towards almost retiring. I mean, he's put in his time. So, yeah, he just did that a lot of his life, and worked extremely hard at it. And then my mom was also involved helping, run the business. So they were kind of doing that as a duo. And obviously without all their hard work, I would have never even got the opportunity to get to race. And so yeah, that was just extremely important for us to allow us to get into outlaw carts. And then, my first laps, once I did get in a sprint car, was my family sprint car. Some kids run for another team from a young age, or have some sort of deal like that, where us, like, we always invested in trying to own our own equipment so we could control what we did, race when we wanted to race. As much as it's actually it's definitely more work to do it that way. It was nice to have our stuff and learn it, and, be hands on. And that definitely taught me and my younger sister, Carly, a lot on, how to work on stuff and how to take care of equipment and how much it really meant, right? It's always sitting in your garage, whether it's in one piece or it's wrecked, it's your stuff and it's in your garage, and you got to manage it. So, I do think that that was a great route that we took. Or it was the route that we took, and it's what made us who we are and where we're at today.
Tell me about your transition into from the Outlaw go-karts to the sprint cars, what caught your eye first of all was you're getting older, you want to move up, maybe go faster. What got you guys pointed towards sprint cars versus maybe a dirt late model or a dirt modified or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I think so actually at one point we wanted to go the asphalt route and I hadn't, it was kind of before when I was probably like 10 or 11. My dad was really looking at like there was the Bandolero division and there was some stuff going on in California. I think it's like Madera Speedway, like there's some asphalt stuff because of course I wanted to be a NASCAR driver. Like that's what we watched. We actually didn't know as much about the Outlaws and all that going on. And obviously too back then that was before it was streamed and you could really watch it and see it, unless you were really plugged into what was going on. So we actually bought a Bandolero and it never even actually got, or maybe I ran it once or I don't know. We kind of put it together and then we just like, we ended up, we were going to have to travel so much and we just got so focused on the kart stuff. Like we were going to go the asphalt route and then quickly my dad kind of pumped the brakes and we switched. And then by the time I was 13, 14, about 14 years old, there's actually a class in Southern Oregon called like a limited sprint car. So it's essentially, it's not a 305, but it's like a cast iron 360. Like it makes about 550 horsepower. It's supposed to be like more cost effective 360 that goes a little bit slower and you can run the engines more races. Well, at the time, the class was actually very healthy. Like there was probably, 30 or 40 cars in the state and you could travel some. And it was, again, a little bit more affordable. So as some of our friends were getting into that from the go-karts, it just made sense that we try to go that route and go the sprint car route. And that's kind of essentially, again, and a lot of the outlaw kart people before us, were doing that, whether they were going into wing sprint cars or they were going into midgets, they were kind of trying to move up the ladder. So we ended up going that route and again, owning all of our own stuff. And I mainly ran the limited class, just kind of locally when I was 14, 15 years old. And I actually never even got a 410 until I was, I think, maybe 17, almost 18 years old. It was 2021. So, I didn't get in a 410 right away when I was 14. I feel like worked my way up a little bit slower, just than maybe some nowadays, but, got some seat time and just, built our schedule with our equipment with what we could do and the help that we had.
Tell me about the ISCS because I see you had you succeeded very well in that deal, and I think that a step above the limited sprint car that you were talking about just now?
So at the time, that actually was the limited class. So that was like their
Okay.
little traveling division, and it just made sense for us because it was like local. So we could run all throughout the state, run all the different tracks. They even had like a speed week, and so we did that. And again, that was like their limited 360. And then with that, at the time, there was even a couple more actual 360 races. So there was like two different speed weeks we could run each year. We would do that. We could race a lot throughout the summer and then, still go to California a little bit and then go up kind of like towards Skagit. And back then, that's when ASCS would come out here for Dirt Cup, back when Dirt Cup wasn't a 410 race. And so we kind of just did that the first couple years, like as many races as we could run without having to travel as much. And then we really stepped up our traveling probably about right around COVID because, the West Coast got hit a little bit harder and couldn't race. And so then we had to figure out like, okay, are we going to, kind of just go with what's going on and we ended up just deciding to pack all of our stuff up and ASCS announced that they were doing a speed week through like Oklahoma and Arkansas and stuff. And we didn't have a 410 at the time. So we were just traveled out there for a week or two to go run 360 races and then come back home. And that's kind of how our schedule developed over time where we would, travel out for a couple weeks or a month, race as much as we could, then go back home, race some. We knew it was very important for my career to get to the Midwest because there's just, there's a little more eyeballs out there. There's more opportunity. There was a few more rides and not that California is bad. California actually has some of the most talent, I feel like, in the country. Just for whatever reason, sprint car racing's different. And I don't know, the scene is, and there's less fans and it's just a different atmosphere, but there's some really talented race car drivers. But we just felt it was important for us to go out there to really improve my career and possibly get an opportunity.
The ISCS you said had a little bit of different motor rules. So were you able to take that motor and go be competitive with the ASCS, or did you guys have to switch some of that stuff around to maybe get that be able to run up front with those guys?
Yeah, nowadays the limited class now is a little bit closer, but there still are different. So yeah, we would run like we had a limited engine, and then we also bought a 360 because they were kind of different. The limiteds were about 100 horsepower off, so we always just ran the limited with the limited division. And some guys in the limited class, again, there was a little bit of a variety. I mean, some guys had crate engines and stuff like that, but yeah, no, it was good having that limited class because I think for me, it kind of allowed me to get in a sprint car that was, you know, quite a bit slower. Everything, compared to actually our outlaw carts, again, it actually felt slow. Things weren't happening very fast. It allowed me to learn, the width of my car, the closing rate, again, how just to drive a big race car because all I had driven up until that point was go karts.
Like you said, during COVID, you guys made that move because you basically just wanted a race at the time. At what point are you starting to think that maybe this is something you want to pursue full time, or is it still the family thing, a little bit more of a hobby?
Yeah, I think it was probably somewhere in the middle. At the time too, we were documenting everything as well, so I had my channel and we were pumping out all of our social media content. So we started to develop a following and also probably about then, probably between 2020 and 2022 is when it started to change. I would say through some of my social, I was gathering a little bit more sponsorship. So that was helping our family team. We had also gotten a little bit more help. We were running a bigger schedule, but, it's kinda weird looking back on it all because, I don't really know where the point changed. I guess we just in my head, it was like, "This is the direction that we're heading," and we didn't really know what the timeline was gonna look like. Like, was it gonna be next year we're gonna be full time, or is it gonna be 5 years? Like, we just wanted to keep taking steps, and it's interesting too, I don't really feel like any of those seasons were maybe necessarily like, "Man, this year was our breakout year." It was just, like, good consistent progress where we were improving and we were seeing new racetracks. And, then I remember in like 2022, I think I got my first top 10 with the World of Outlaws. Like that was awesome. And yeah, like I would say from 2022 ons where like things really changed and everything before that was a little bit slower because we were, again, just racing much more locally. But once we started traveling and, tackling bigger races is when like things started, progressing at a much faster rate.
Tanner, one thing that you have excelled at better than any open wheel driver I know out there right now was the use of social media. And that's what I was going to just kind of move into along with this. I'm glad you brought it in. So it was an easy segue here. But your YouTube channel, and I would say it's probably from what the numbers I don't, but it has blowed up. Your in your Facebook and your all your other social medias. And to me, it seems like you took that conscious effort to get that going. And tell me about the beginning aspects of that, how you thought the social media would go compared to where it is today, because I am of a very staunch believer that your social media aided you more than you can ever imagine. And I take that as a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say so too. And I think it's kind of almost like our journey in racing. Like you don't really know, I didn't really know where it was going to go. It was just like I was 13 years old at the time and I had some encouragement from my parents, probably like it not necessarily to have a channel or anything, but they just were like, "Man, son, you seem like a good talker. Like maybe you should talk about some racing stuff. Maybe, because we had like a little small racing Facebook page and like my parents would post updates, right? Doing the normal thing, like trying to help and share with our friends on like how we're doing and stuff. And with that too, I was always I was probably a kid that was on YouTube a little bit more than the average, because I enjoyed watching other creators. And so I just put it all together that like, you know, maybe with if I can learn to talk, get better at talking, make some content. I enjoy watching other people that, have a unique sport. Like I remember watching some other kid that was actually like a professional scooter rider and he could do tricks and stuff. And like I was not into that at all, but I came across his content and it resonated with me and I enjoyed it. So then I was like, okay, well, maybe I want to be a professional race car driver and I race karts and not a lot of people know about them. What if I post stuff and people come across it and will think it's interesting? And so once I started in 2016, when I was 13 years old, I kind of just ran with it. I kind of told myself, like, I need to post a couple times a week, keep people updated. I think I learned quickly that consistency was important. And then it never like it's funny when people say like, "Oh, maybe did it blow up or whatever?" Like to me, it felt like again, it was just kind of progression. Like I just kept sharing videos, and some I'd look and like, okay, no one wanted to watch me today, and some days like it was a home run. And so yeah, you just learn a lot over time about it, and I think even it probably hasn't even stuck probably till the last 2 years, honestly, with how impactful it was because of again, the opportunities it got me, like without my social media, I probably wouldn't have got some of the sponsorship to run my family car at the level that we did, where we were traveling around the country. We were never full time on a tour, but like we were taking on the Knoxville Nationals, or like it helped us buy like another engine, or it helped us, pay our tire bill for a good portion of the year, whatever. Like it all kind of comes together. And then, you know, I firmly believe, like, I don't know if I didn't have my social media following, if I would have been as much of a candidate to get in the Shark Racing car. And I know that I probably wouldn't have had as much of an opportunity to get in the Tarlton car because, I love the Tarltons. Like, Tommy didn't know who I was, though, but his son Tommy did from watching my videos and had mentioned to, hey, maybe you guys should pick up this kid. Like, and so it's just stuff like that. And so, yeah, I was very blessed that, how much it has helped. And to us, it was just super important, super important to myself and all the people around me. Like, we just hammered it as much as we could because I felt like, that was a way for me to be different. And in the racing world now, there's a lot of talented drivers, and people don't realize actually how close every driver is. I mean, they're all really good at what they do, and we're all splitting hairs to be the best. So I figured that if I had something that could make me a little bit different and stand out, then that, hopefully would help me and also leave a good impact on the rest of the community, right? Like I want to share and get behind the curtain on our sprint car education and show fans what it's all about because they see 5% of really what's going on. There's so much more to it. And if we can, show our sport in more of a way and show how awesome it is, we really have a hidden gem, I believe. And I think it's just now starting to get out to more of the world that doesn't know about it.
You said the social media helped pay some of the motor bill, get a motor or tire bills, which are both huge expenses in today's day and age of the sprint car world. But could you have imagined where how different it would be if you hadn't taken that up? Because you have basically a family racing team with your dad's own business funding the whole operation. Tell me if I'm
Yep.
wrong. And then you're getting some people that are watching your social media stuff and they're helping out. How much of a sacrifice did your parents make to let you live your dream?
I mean, it was huge. It was huge. Yeah, no, like my parents, I mean, again, like they had a successful business, but it wasn't. I think a lot of times in racing, I'm sure people kind of get I don't know what the word would be. They get labeled like as if, these people are rich or these people are rich or this or that. But like, I think people don't realize like how much maybe, like you said, families do sacrifice like literally how they live so then we can race. And I think that my family would have been one of those. It wasn't like there was an endless checkbook to go race. They worked really hard and they worked overtime all the time. And you know how it is owning a business, you kind of never stop anyway. Like my parents would be at the races, like, on the phone, this and that, dealing with, all the normal. So yeah, no, they did sacrifice a lot. And I think that was also too, like it clicked more and more as I went that like, hey, if I can grow my social media, this kind of go this route. And as I grow as a driver, if I can really, essentially become more valuable, right? Whether it's to partners or whether it's to a team or, I can maybe take that burden away from my parents. And it wasn't like so I could go necessarily do it on my own or say, but like I was like, man, I could really, maybe acquire some of everything to have like how Brian Brown has his team set up or how Rico has his team set up. And I say that now as I'm driving for another team, but you know, just because I'm right now the spot I'm in doesn't necessarily mean like my program's all still sitting there in the spot that it got left. And so yeah, anyway, like to me, I really wanted to go down that path because honestly, as of the last, let's say like 2025, and it started a little bit more in 2024, but I was able to grow, I would say, my program into a spot where like I was taking on a lot more financial burden. Like it wasn't, my parents helped for so many years and I saw it all in front of me. And then, I was like, well, man, if I can get this sponsor and get that sponsor, and then, hey, like we're doing the videos and we're fortunate to sell merch and it all kind of compounded to where it's like, I could take on like, probably over 80% of the operating costs to run the season. And so, yeah, anyway, like it just over time it grew but it would have never ever gotten there without, everything they put into it to the start. It just was really cool that, I had that and then, was able to really take advantage of it and build it then to, again, at least where we left off at the end of 2025, we had probably 15 to 20 sponsors and people helping with, it all adds up. And yeah, it was just it's just really really cool how it was able to grow and again, like I said, we still have all of our equipment because in sprint car racing, you never want to get rid of stuff. Like it's nice to have and it's there for if we're able to run a couple races at certain points or just to have into the future.
you guys jump on, you said 2020, you guys pretty much had to hit the road. COVID had kind of changed the whole aspect of wherever it depended where you were in the country at the time as to what
Yeah,
you could and couldn't do. But you got to hit the road. And the part that I also wanted to bring into regarding the sacrifice of the family is at that point, it's pretty much you and mom and dad and Carly heading up and down the road is my guess. I want you to tell me if I'm wrong there, but you guys have had to learn obviously the sprint cars as a family. Now you're traveling out to the Midwest, part of the country to race. And how, your parents still have the business. They got to keep that going too. Was that a challenge at times for your dad or your mom to say, hey, I got to get back to work here for a couple days, staying out like that?
absolutely. Yeah, and even honestly till like, till this day, right? Like it's still as if they're like even, they'll come watch the races and whatnot and still like they're heading back home because they're still working and stuff. And it definitely was even back then. So back then it would be like my parents were going, even I have an older sister that at times would go. Carly was there and like Carly, one thing to even touch on with her, like she sacrificed a lot because she probably didn't, she didn't get to race as much too because I was racing a lot and it was hard to do both. And so, like, in the long run, like, I give a lot of credit to her, and as much as now, like, her career has kinda went where she's, not been behind the wheel as like, not been behind the wheel like she once raced, but, like, has now turned into, like, just a phenomenal mechanic, and I think all things work out, like I said, how they're supposed to, but, a lot of credit to her because, she didn't get to race as much because we were so, like, pushing down where I was at. And then at the time, we did have we had 2 or 3 different crew chiefs kinda that helped when I first started, and the main reason my parents wanted to get a crew chief was more to have someone that, we didn't know anything about sprint cars, at least in go-karts and stuff, like, a little easier to learn, and again, it's more of like it's a go-kart. But in sprint cars, you're dealing with, well, it's my life, but still, like, it's a safety, and so we had some good mechanics early on to get me going fast, but again, make sure everything was done right and to teach Carly and I how to do it. And that's where we learned. And it would have been a lot more difficult to do it without help in our local area and stuff. So we did that. And then I would say probably is when it did start transitioning was a lot more of just Carly and I was about 2023. We had raced and again had some different help. But then like when we hit the road and started racing and that year when we went to the Knoxville Nationals for the first time with our family car and stuff, like we again, like when we hit the road, like it was Carly, I, and like another crew guy, and my parents were there and stuff like that. But as far as like really hands on the car was like just a couple of us, and again, a lot of that is when you're really putting in the time and the work, and you're sometimes you hit on things, and sometimes you're really learning the hard way because it's just that difficult, and you're up against people that have been racing longer than I've been alive, and so yeah, definitely having good help is super important. And like, in today's day and age, it is hard to find. It's a tough sport and it's not it's not as glamorous as it looks. If you actually truly go out there and live it and you're on a team and you're bouncing from hotels or you're living in a rig or whatever the situation is, you're eating at, McDonald's and Burger King at 1 in the morning and washing cars, like it looks really cool, and it looks really cool to be standing in victory lane, but for that, like, 2 minutes, like, everything else, like, it's a lot of work, but we just always embraced it, I feel like, and I think you have to push as far in the sport as, racing at a high level and being involved for many years because, yeah, it's just tough.
I want to jump back because you told me you had an older sister, which I wasn't aware of. She probably because she's not in the racing scene, but Carly's very well known now amongst the racers, and I think she's very well respected. Um, so first of all, who's the better mechanic, Tanner, you or her?
Oh, Carly by a mile. I always say I don't know, and I really believe this. Like it's funny. I think God works in funny ways. Like Carly was born with a 9/16 in her hand. I swear. Like it's the craziest. It's the craziest thing. When we were racing outlaw carts, she could wear out her stuff. And like Carly was actually, many people don't know, Carly was a solid racer. Like Carly, again,
Hmm.
and she also did it with a lot less experience than what I had. Because I think when you're just younger, you get moved up a little bit faster because you're kind of like being dragged along, right? Carly could like fix stuff when she was young. Like she understood things. Maybe, again, not like she was 8 or 9 and knew the whole setup, but like she could definitely take stuff apart and put it back together. And she learned that again with not like a lot of wasn't like taught all that. There was definitely a natural ability there. So Carly was a better mechanic, still is a better mechanic. I had to work a lot harder to be good at that. And that's also went part of the reason why I believe you just do things and you go down routes like that you're good at. Like to me, social media and tech and cameras, like it all just came easy to me. So I'm like, man, I'm really good at this. Let's do that. And Carly, hey, you're really good at working on cars. Like I had to work really hard to be good at cars. I just didn't understand some of it as much. You know, again, I always had to work a little bit slower. Like I just didn't have the pace. Like Carly, I left in her dust. You know what I mean? All the time. So yeah, Carly's really talented at what she does. And, again, I think that there's just like some real natural ability for her and she understands it. And she also has what's really good about her is she really wants to do things to like the best, like no matter what it is on the car, like everything done right and done to the best. And so when we had our program, that's where she was always really good. And I knew that's where she'd be valuable to someone else because she's not about shortcuts, and stuff like that. So yeah, she wants to do things well and do things right.
Do you think she still has a desire to race? Because I got lucky enough to meet you, both you and Carly here a couple years back, and pop in and chat with you guys every now and then. And you guys always talked about you were going to get back because Carly had a couple races she was going to run, stuff during the off season. And I think you kind of said she was kind of held back, but I say in a weird way because she still was addicted to that sprint car deal where she wanted to be out doing that too. So the racing side of Carly, do you think she's got the potential to be a successful race car driver down the road?
I think she maybe did, like, way back then, not that she doesn't now, I guess just like you said, the desire, I think she really enjoys, like, the working on it and going down that route, and then, also, my poor sister, like, she had a couple tough injuries, she broke her back in a sprint car, and I'm sure, like, for anyone that is traumatic, she had a really bad accident, and then it was, like, right when she recovered from that and was gonna maybe try to go down the path, then she broke her foot in an Outlaw cart, and again, like, but both of those, I mean, and sometimes it just happens. Like both those incidents wasn't necessarily like, hey, Carly was out there being dumb and wrecked her car. Like it was literally like just the worst. Like one car wrecks in front of her in the cart and lands on her foot, and again shatters her foot. And now to this day, it's still that's a bad. You'd rather maybe break your leg or something because it can heal, but like your foot has so many bones and it just like shattered her heel.
Yeah.
And so I know that makes it difficult. Like you use your feet obviously to drive, and then the back deal was just a bad deal when she wrecked there. So I think that she does. It's just also like again, I think also probably has she you get older and like again now she's she's a grown woman, she's an adult, and she's also like realizes that there's other things in life and in the sense of like hey it's I really like working on stuff and I can really go down this path and work to be the best at it and in driving unless you're just maybe racing some local track on a Saturday night like as you get moving up like it's really tough. And so I think some of that time she lost from injuries and whatnot also made it more difficult. And then also too, like we were out racing at a high level with myself. So I don't think she'll ever not get back in a car. I think she could still rip. And again, like our go-kart stuff, like she won some races against some boys and stuff like that. Like she was really good through her teenage years. It just, I think the desire is probably just a little bit less there after you have some bad crashes and get hurt and realize, man, like it's just a dangerous sport. And, she'll probably tell you it's a lot safer. It's a lot safer working on them for the most part. And you can also still get a lot of satisfaction. And, she, is really good at like learning to make them go fast and all that stuff. And it's, you still get all the same things, being a part of teams that win and being a big hand, the driver gets all the credit, but there's a lot, as you guys know, behind the scenes that drivers wouldn't be able to win races without.
No, exactly. You talked earlier in the show just very shortly about you getting called up to the Shark Racing team here a couple years back. And this is going to kind of segue into a different part of the conversation later, but you were able to get out there and do some races with Shark Racing and basically finish out the year after Jacob decided he wanted to take a little bit of a break. And do you think that was one of the premier moments that got your name out there a little more recognized? You were already out racing with the Outlaws and the big, the All-Stars, I think, at that time.
Yeah.
But you get tabbed, you get a call from Bobby Allen or Jacob, I'm not sure who it was, but hey, you want to come drive this car. Tell me about first the reaction, and does that make you say, hey, maybe the social media stuff and along with my results from the family car got me this opportunity?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of it just like timing and circumstances. Like we roll into Knoxville, going through the Nationals, and like for us, the Nationals was our final race before we were like getting ready to head home. And then, because being from the West Coast, your season's kind of different. And so like we were staying out through the Nationals, and by then, like, won't lie, you're exhausted. We had ran like I think a speed week. We had been all over traveling and stuff, and again, doing it with a little less help. So literally getting ready to go home. It's the final day of the Knoxville Nationals. Like we're like, I think we were in a C main. And it was actually really cool that Nationals. We had got some help from a local guy. Maybe some would know John Agan in the Knoxville area. And so he
Mhm.
crew chiefed my car for 360 and 410. And we had kind of struggled throughout the trip. And then once we had some help, man, we got going. Like we qualified good on our prelim night, and we didn't get through the heat race, and we then missed the B, I think, by like through. Otherwise, we might have had a shot to make the Saturday show, like points wise, because we had qualified really well. But anyway, so we're like, all right, we're in the C. Let's go make the best of tonight. It is what it is. Like we had fun. This was my first nationals. We really, we did well in some areas, and so we're probably like an hour before the pit meeting, and I was, we unloaded everything and went in the infield, and all of a sudden, like Bobby Allen was behind my car. And obviously I knew Bobby. I'd never talked to him, but it's hard to miss him on his moped with his little
Yeah.
hat and everything. Like you just can't. And so I think he was talking to my one crew guy or something. And then I walked up because I'm like, man, why is he waiting behind my car? And we all kind of knew that maybe, well, we knew that obviously they were going to maybe be looking for a driver. But again, I didn't have any thought that like, I just figured they already had that taken care of, right? They're getting ready to race, I think, the next week. And so me and my dad had kind of walked around, and yeah, Bobby, I mean, and if anyone knew Bobby, like he kind of talks fast and he talks under his breath. So he said all this to us very quickly in about 30 to 45 seconds, like, hey, we need a driver. Like we race Jackson next weekend. If you want to run Huset's, we can run Tuesday. Like if you want to drive, and like here's how it's going to be, and like if you let us know, like I can get your seat tomorrow. And go. Like it wasn't like, hey, I'm Bobby Allen. Like it wasn't any of that really. It was like he just started talking like he already knew me, and he didn't really know me. He told me like way later on he had no idea. He didn't even know which one was me that drove the car. So it was just a crazy situation, and I was just stunned and shocked, and then I know he drove off, and me and my dad looked at each other and we're like, "Well, I got it. You got to do that. Like, absolutely. I mean, what an opportunity." So yeah, just kind of took a second, took it all in because we still had a little time before the races, and then Bobby came over after, and yeah, I was just like, "Hey, I'm in. Like, absolutely. Like, let's. I'll get my seat out of this thing first thing in the morning." And then luckily that was back when High Limit was just doing the midweek money stuff. So then
Okay.
we ran Huset's and then went right to Jackson. And yeah, I mean, it was great. Like that was definitely my first big opportunity. First time I really driven anyone else's sprint car too. So it was a chance to run different equipment and work with him and work with their team and just yeah, I mean, it was just amazing. It was an amazing experience. I think I had got my first 7 top 10s with the World of Outlaws and my first quick time, and just something to kind of get you out there and get my name kind of in front of people. And yeah, definitely without that opportunity, it's hard to say where maybe how my path would have been different to this day.
You said that was in 2023 or 2024, Tanner?
Yeah, 2023 Knoxville Nationals, and then I
Okay.
think I did about 25 races throughout the rest of the season with them.
Yeah. I know you finished out the year. I remember we were by Charlotte there. Um, so then you go into 2024 and you're back in the family ride, but
Yep.
you obviously by then you've got that taste of the national tour of being able to race and get a paycheck. How does that make 2025 different than the other years you drove the family car?
Yeah, it was because all of a sudden then we're like, because at the end of 2023, actually, for a brief minute, Bobby was, because so people that Bobby was like a planner. And like, it's funny, even till him just passing this last year, when I saw him at Eldora in July, he was talking to me about 5 years down the road. Like, he had all this stuff planned out. And so even then in 2023, he was at one point trying to plan like Jake was going to come back. I was going to go run. I was going to be a third shark car. And anyway, he was trying to see if there was a way to make that work. And unfortunately it didn't. So then once I realized during the off season that, okay, we're not going to go down that route. I got to get back in the family car. How can I build the biggest schedule, essentially? And so in years past, we had only went out to the Midwest once, and we would kind of do like our own little tour, like as many races as we could for a month. That's my parents could only be away from work that long. Like that's only the equipment that we really had. Like we needed to go out there, take care of our stuff, see as many places. But that year I found a little bit more help, and we went out and actually ran like some early races in March and April and stuff. And then, kind of had a much bigger schedule, but still like I would still say like we were still the little team. We were down a little bit on help, and it was just kind of I feel like it was again, we weren't full time on tour, but we were really like getting a session every night in school. You know what I mean? Like going and
Yeah.
racing, and it's just so difficult, as we were seeing new racetracks, and again, it was just Carly and I and one other person, and yeah, definitely our goal was just to keep building to see like if, again, if I could get a good opportunity or, if we could pick up a really good crew chief. That's the other thing. Like I think with our operation these last couple of years, we never had like a guy that we could like look to as our person. So Carly and I were just doing the best we could to figure things out and put in the time to learn the setup and learn and also be in the loop of what's going on with how people are advancing shocks and bars and what guys are doing in the industry because you have to know the right people to get some of that information and getting some of that's very valuable because you can be one step ahead of the rest of everyone or at least be with them as they take the step ahead of everyone else.
Yeah. You guys, you get through the year and then I don't know, tell us a little bit because you were able to drive for Tommy Tarlton last year, some of the best equipment in the country. They've obviously got really nice stuff. Great group of people. How
Yep.
did that whole deal come together?
Yeah, so I'd made it through 2024 and won a couple races in my car but nothing crazy. I mean, I won at one KWS show and then some other 360 races and the 21 car was looking for a driver as Cole was moving on. He announced, pretty early that he was going on the Outlaw tour. And, you know, I had one of my buddies was like the tire guy on the Tarleton team. I mean, at least I knew him and talked with him a little bit. But again, I hadn't really had any thought that like, because those guys were running a lot of narc stuff and obviously they do travel and actually now the last year and then this year traveling even more. But I just hadn't really thought of it because like they were chasing narc points and I was like, man, I'm not really wanting to do that. I'm wanting to go try to be full time. I don't want to actually be on the West Coast all year. Well, then out of nowhere, Carson had got kind of a hold of me, Carson Macedo, because, he obviously him and Cole being so tight with everyone and, he wants the best for the program. And he's like, hey, would you have any interest in driving the 21? And honestly, at first, I actually wasn't really sure. But then as I got more information and talked to Drew, and Drew was like, hey, no, look, we know that you want to travel and stuff. Like, we can put together something to travel and make this work. And I'm like, okay, well, actually, that would be awesome, and I feel like I was looking to see how I could align myself with a really good mechanic, and obviously Drew Warner is. And so, yeah, we kind of had it all set up. And then during the offseason, it had changed a little bit because originally I was going to run the 21 car full time, but then they had an opportunity to bring James in and do something on that end of the deal. So that's then how it kind of turned into a half schedule. And I was obviously already committed that way. So I'm like, okay, I'll just run my car, then the other half and make the best of it. And throughout the year too, even though they were still doing the 21 stuff, they were, looking over me and giving me help and whatnot, to the best they could. So yeah, that's kind of how all that came about. But I guess the one part I skipped over, I mentioned earlier, like I think what really put the bug into if maybe for me to drive was really Tommy's son because he had watched some of my videos and had told Tommy and had said some things and then got everyone thinking, well, like maybe Tanner could drive the car. So yeah, we had basically had a meeting right at the end of that season and I think all of our goals and everything aligned and as what they were wanting to do. And then we set it all up. And then again, I ran half the schedule and James ran the other half. And yeah, I mean, those guys were just great people, so down to earth, took care of us, treated us like family, and gave us everything we needed to be successful and win races. So yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about the 21 guys. And they were a fun group to run with.
And you came out with those guys like right out of the chutes with the guns ablazing too. You guys won 2 or 3 races right early in the year, didn't you?
Yeah, we did, and we had some good runs with High Limit and stuff on their first West Coast swing out here, and honestly had a couple nights that could one night we were right behind Reitzel at Paris for and then blew a tire, and again had some other top 5 runs, and almost won. I think there was a 10,000 win show at Silver Dollar. We were racing for the win on the last lap, so we just had like a lot of speed, and I just felt really comfortable in their stuff right away. And and obviously too, driving for a team like that, I think one thing I didn't realize as much at first because that was, I was very very fortunate to run for Shark, but how Shark kind of had done their stuff. Bobby was all about just like my family car, like you take care of this equipment. Like I remember one night, he was razzing me. He wasn't actually trying to be mean, but like I ran fourth with the Outlaws at Skagit, but I knocked the Jacobs ladder out. And he's like, you did good, kid, but you knocked my ladder out. You know what I mean? So, he just was right because that's how he ran his program. And I totally understood it because that's how my family ran our program, where then getting to run for Tarleton, they had a little bit more equipment and they were like, hey, we want you to go out there and run as hard as you could. So that was really the first time in my career, aside from like, when I ran for a couple teams in Outlaw carts that had some stuff like Go
Yeah.
out there and give this thing 110%. And hey, if it gets wadded up while we're going for the win, like that's going to happen sometimes. And so it was probably the first time in my career I was really ever in a spot where so I probably unlocked a new level in myself on just, pushing as hard as I absolutely could and, not being, because when I drove my own car, again, same thing. I was like, and if I go wreck this thing, like, sometimes second pays better than 24th in a wrecked car. So it's just
Yep.
hard to balance that. That's, something that people on the other side of the curtain don't necessarily see.
Do you think being in the situation with the Tarltons where they're like, let her rip, man, compared to your deal, do you find yourself driving just a little bit different? And is it more mental or is it more physical?
Yeah, I would say it's probably more mental and like I hate to say it. I think you'd be lying if you didn't. I mean, you definitely do everything in your power not to, because in order to win races against Outlaws or High Limit or even a narc show, like you got to put your stuff on the line. And so I think I obviously did put my own equipment on the line, but again, there was just some nights where like, hey, it's not our night, or maybe we missed the setup. And again, you don't want to just like pull in, but let's say you're running 18th and don't pay any different from 16th on back or whatever. Like save your tires, save some, like it's just, not your night where you know, or again, situations where maybe you're running seventh or eighth, and like that just seems like you're at where you're at. Where when you're with a team like the 21 guys, like they're like 110% every lap, like whatever you got. And so, yeah, I just think it is definitely different, and there's definitely different situations in our sport. Certain teams, are going to be more on one side of the fence or the other, depending on again their funding or where they're at, and yeah, I think as a driver no matter what, I think when you own your own program, unless you build it to really a really tall spot, it is just difficult to drive it like you're driving for someone else, because at the end of the day, I got to fix it or Carly's got to fix it, or, we got to order more cars, or we got to spend this or spend that, or we need to go to a sponsor and say, hey, we're kind of in a tough spot. Can you help us with this? Like, and so when you have all that, it's really hard to block all that out. No matter, like I said, I feel like the best people, like that's very difficult. So it's been cool to have opportunities to drive for other people and kind of get to again see things from different perspectives, and also at the same time having ownership in my team and whatnot. I think there was a lot of value for me in my career in that and knowing that. And I think that's also where I can be a little valuable to other teams, is like I do feel like I naturally take care of stuff a little bit better because I really value it.
You ended the year 2025 and a couple seats always come available every year. It's not just this year. Every year rides come available. And I assume you get on the phone and you get together with a character named Tom Buch, who I've known Tom personally for about 20 years, Tanner. So, um, and you couldn't ask for probably a nicer guy. But tell us a little bit about how that deal came together and the deal you guys have in place now for the year.
For sure. No, definitely. Yeah, no, Tom, he's great. Got to spend a little time with him so far. And essentially it was like October and I was trying to figure out what I was gonna do. I obviously had my own stuff sitting there. So I was like, okay, is it possible for me to go run the Outlaws or go run High Limit? I'm like, man, it's gonna be a stretch, but maybe if we had to with our own stuff, that was a possibility. We were trying, we were pushing, we were looking at all of our options there. And then I knew that going into the next year that there was probably the opportunity to do the same thing if I wanted to do half the year with the 21 car and then half the year with my car. Because, again, they still like James was going to come and run some races. So I knew that. And part of me was looking to see, what were my options to try to run one car all year, because don't get me wrong, very grateful to run for the 21 guys. It just was difficult. Like when you get, I feel like we got rolling really good, and then it's like, shoot, I got to jump in my car. And then I had to kind of relearn that because the equipment's different and the engines. And then, I got to try to find help. And so I was like, okay, what are my options to run one car all year? Well, then Tom had messaged me actually just on Facebook. I had never met Tom. I knew the 13 guys a little bit, like as far as just racing with them, but never met any of the team members, never met Tom or anything. And he had just sent me a message on Facebook asking like what I was doing and this and that. And I remember exactly where I was at. I was working out at a Planet Fitness, and I got a notification, and because I was actually almost going to reach out and call them. If they hadn't reached out when they did, like I was like, you know what, maybe I need to call the 13 team and see what they're doing. And he actually messaged me on Facebook. So I got back to him and he said, well, we'll be back in touch in a couple weeks once our season's over. And I hadn't heard anything for, again, probably like 2 weeks. And actually, like the day before, I kind of written off. I'm like, I haven't heard anything. Like those guys, I'm surely right. They're not just talking to one driver. I mean, that's just not how it works. And the next morning, Sean Strasbaugh, the crew chief, called me, and again hadn't talked to him before, and we talked for like 10 or 15 minutes and everything seemed good. And he's like, well, okay, I'm gonna call Tom and he'll probably call you. And then he called me again. And like within half an hour, I went from like thinking that I was totally done, like that was off the table to like, hey, can you be in Charlotte next week? So it's just really cool how that happens. It was very quick. And I think too, it was a situation like I've had in other, with Shark or with Tarlton that I think naturally you just do realize if you like align with someone and who they are and their values and how they run their team and stuff. And I just think that was all pretty evident quickly, between Tom and Sean and myself. And so yeah, it just totally worked out. And I'm stoked to now be a high roller and I think we're both kind of on the same page, just trying to build together. They have a great program, and obviously I'm newer to the national scene, but just try to build it into the best that it can be and keep growing onward and upward.
Definitely. You moved to the 13 car, and the one thing that I know is different probably, and this was kind of something I've been thinking about as we're sitting here talking, is you have the family car, you have the Shark Racing 1A, you have the Tarleton car, and you're back to the 18T family car, and you've always had Sister Carly with you. I noticed when any car you went to, and that is no longer the same this year because Carly, obviously your relationship with Shark Racing meant a lot to them and they got to see her work ethic. She is now transitioned over to the car chief for Logan
Yep.
Schuhart, and you're going high limit racing in the 13 car. Is it something you even notice? It's like, hey, Carly's not here.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely is weird, and it hits you at different times. I think Carly and I, we just got used to we spent so much time together, and it was interesting. We knew like as going through 2025 like that maybe things I don't know, we envision that we're obviously going to race together as much as we could, but then there also might be a situation where like exactly kind of what happened this year. Yeah, as I got to the end of my season, and then Carly had gotten one thing that was kind of under just because of like timing and stuff. Like Carly got to go work for Anthony Macri a couple weeks. They needed some help at the end of 2025, and so she went and did that and had a great time and liked working with those guys. And so I think that she knew that if there was a good opportunity, or if she could go with me, like either or. It was just we both kind of had interesting opportunities and timing wise that we ended up in different directions. And so yeah, I think though in the end with that, like we both know that we're in a spot like we're both going to grow a lot, learn a lot. And not that you can't learn a lot together. I mean, our whole career we learned a lot together, but we also know that like, hey, sometimes you learn when you're around different people or different situations, and that helps mold you into like your skills and everything that you have, whether it's as a driver, whether it's as a crew guy, crew chief. So yeah, no, it definitely is. And in the future, like if there was a spot where we could work together again, it'd be really cool to see how we both progress as we both get better in the sport and race at a high level. And I'm just really proud of her and want to see her be a really good crew chief because I know she has all the capabilities. She's just, extremely young and around a lot of good people that can definitely help get her there. So yeah, no, it is different. And you know, I'm sure we'll, see each other as we go throughout the season, even though we're on different tours, but there'll definitely be times to meet up. And it's nice, Hanover is not that far from their shop in PA. So we're still kind of close in that sense. And, we'll get to spend some time in different areas together.
Like you said earlier in the show, when you started, you guys were always looking to hire that crew chief, to kind of guide you guys.
Yep.
I'm willing to bet that the next time you and Carly get together working on the same team, you'll have your crew chief too, because
Yeah.
she just you can just see her absorbing all the information she takes in. I saw her flying around on the four-wheeler at Volusia both times. The confidence in that girl, you can just see it on her face right now. It's something that you should both be proud of because you guys have done a great job together that way. So
No, thank you. Yeah, and absolutely. No, that's where like yeah, I actually I do laugh a little bit like when again like I know all the shark racing guys and stuff like that and I'm like those guys all are probably going to feel a little bit how I felt like, you work hard but like you got to watch out cuz Carly will run you right over cuz she's 110 miles an hour. So, yeah, no, it'll be obviously she'll be great for them and Logan is I mean he's been around for so long and such a top-notch guy like what a great person for her to get to learn from and their whole group. So yeah, 2026 is looking good for both of us. And I guess at least if we're on different teams, I mean, obviously it'd been nice to be on the same tour, but there's also, I think, a blessing we don't have to compete against each other. So that's kind of good too. We just can both do our own thing and
yeah,
come together for a couple big shows and race hard.
yeah, and I never thought of it that way. So We're gonna move back to kind of how we started this conversation. You've been at Volusia. Now you've got let's say what, 8, 9 shows between Charlotte and last year
Yep.
with Buch and with Sean. And I want you to tell me a little bit about your relationship with Sean Strasbaugh as a crew chief. To me, he seems like one of the most laid back guys there is. Is just full of knowledge also.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and I think like as a driver, you want to align with people that are similar to you. And I feel like Sean and I are very similar, like with personalities and maybe how we would approach a race night and how, I think you always want to say like, how does a crew chief approach a good night? How do they approach a bad night? Like stuff like that. I would say we're probably similar in the sense of just, you know, I want to be around like good level-headed people that like, hey, we're here, like we're going to battle and then but also know like, hey, there's going to be our bad nights and what's most important is what we can learn and take away from them and maybe where did we get off course or hey, like where did the driver screw up and like, this is something to hit on in the future. And so yeah, I mean, again, I didn't know Sean before the end of this last year, but quickly I've got to spend, time around him. And I think it's important for teams to spend time together. And that's what's going to be nice now obviously during the off season with, just where we're both located, obviously I'm thousands of miles away, but now, we get to spend a lot more time on the road. And I think that's a good chance for teams to just bond. Like we've already got some a little bit between our Florida trips and would just be really nice to, again, have that. And I think you learn more about each other and, what people like to do away from racing or, what little things and stuff like all that's super important. So yeah, no, really like Sean, really like our team. And again, I feel like we just naturally click because we're very similar, and that was also part of why I did kind of go down the Book 13 route because I actually had a couple people that were, new the team, and when I had even mentioned that that might be an opportunity, they said like, "Hey, you and Sean will go very well together." Like they just could see it. So I think in the long run that'll be awesome, and again, as a driver, you're looking for a situation where you can really build, and the longer teams can spend together, usually the more successful they are.
How much have you got to know Tom Buch?
Uh, you know, got to spend some time in November, when I was at the shop for like a week, and he drove me around and gave me the tour. And yeah, no, Tom's great. He only made it to one of our race nights. Tom's always so busy working. He reminds me of my parents. He just working nonstop, making it happen behind the scenes. But he's definitely a character, and he's one of the best story. I have again only been around him a little bit, but he's one of the best storytellers. He has he has a lot of stories, so a lot of good ones. He could probably have his own podcast for many episodes on different things, from him owning race cars.
People that might not know it, I'm lucky enough to know Tom on a close basis too. He's about as laid back as it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he is very, very laid back and like I said, just, super hard worker and has deep roots in Pennsylvania and just loves dirt racing and has really what at least the team guys talk about, they've really built their program up too in a way like, used to run around more locally and, had some very well named drivers and or maybe had even some name guys before their careers really took off, in the seed and then, now racing on a national level with again lots of equipment and a top tier crew chief and top tier crew guys like they've really built and if you would see their shop, like their shop's not, it's not I am sure you have. Yeah, I mean, it's not anything like some of these other race teams. They've done it all out of this like it doesn't look much bigger than your garage. So just an old school shop from way back 50 years ago in Pennsylvania in Lancaster. So it's really cool what they got.
It definitely is. Talk about your goals for the year with the high limit series. You get you're obviously running for rookie of the year. In that deal, you're committed to a full time traveling series this year. What are your expectations, your goals, and what do you hope to achieve by the end of this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing I don't know, going into the year, I didn't really, this first time doing, like, I don't know, haven't said, like, I want this many top fives, this many top tens. Like, for us, it's just all about consistency. Like, I think as a rookie, right, because like I said, there's the highs and the lows. Like, for us, it's just building good, consistent nights. And that all starts with unloading well. So for us, like these last couple nights, we qualified good. Like, I think more than anything, our emphasis is just focusing on how can we qualify the best at each racetrack? And I think if we do that, everything else kind of falls into place. But I would be lying if I said I don't wanna win a race, obviously, like, I have a goal to win one or win a handful. I think if we get rolling, we definitely can. Obviously, the 13 car won a high limit show last year, so nothing specific, but main thing is just consistency, and, this is the largest schedule I've ever ran, so how for me how for me as a driver and how for a team can we show up 110% all season long because it's a long year from February to November, and, um yeah, I think, like I said, that consistent showing up best we can be, good preparation in between events, and just continuously improving. So, yeah, I mean, again, nothing crazy, no certain numbers or whatever. Like, we want to go out there and try to win races and focus on having speed right out of the gate each night. And I feel like you do that, you're in position more than you think than to have the results that you would like.
Do you think it's going to also help? You've been out traveling around. Some of these tracks you're not rolling into for the first time. And do you think that makes a difference for a driver?
Absolutely. No, it definitely does. I mean, if I look back on paper, which, would be tough, but like my results at a place the second time I went there versus the first are usually a lot better. It's just as a driver, you become more familiar. You kind of know maybe what to look for. So that I think that's very normal. I mean, and then too, there is some advantages sometimes to going places and never being there. I can think of situations where it's easy as a driver if you know a place well to think like that's not possible, that might not be possible, that's not going to happen, and then someone could surprise you and go out there and rip the fence down or do something crazy. But yeah, I don't know. I think like I said, I mean, for us, it's important just to focus on one night at a time, and whether we've never been there or we have a whole notebook like just really being present in what we're working on and again focusing on that night because we have 100 nights ahead of us, but the only one that matters right now is the Las Vegas season opener, and once that's done we'll be focused on night number two and continue on from there.
I'm hoping things go well for you guys. The last thing I want to touch on, we've already touched on this once, but I want to just kind of split off to it too. You, let's just say that you can owe maybe your career to your social media, your YouTube. It's not that 100%, but it helped you out a ton. And talk about the importance of social media now
Yeah.
in the racing world. I see how, David Gravel has obviously stepped up his game in a big way. He's got some people that help him out. I know that Sheldon's guys, the social media game has definitely gone up the last couple of years. And tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything, and I know a lot of people. There's some people. There's going to be like the 60-year-old race fans that are telling me I'm crazy and it's all about driving the car. And don't get me wrong, it is. My number one job, as I talk to you right now, is to be the best race car driver I can be. That's solely what matters. And like as I've built up to the level, I have added more help around me to try to take care of the other things that I know are important, but unfortunately, I can't put all my focus on. So like I have some help too with my content and this and that. But to like the young kids, like the best advice I could give them is like this is the world that we are living in. Like there whether you like and I guess it could be to the people in the generations above me as well, but like this is the world we're living in and it's definitely not going the other direction. Like it's going wide open into, everything content related. And so the best thing that you can do is embrace it and whether you like it or not and just and use it because it's the number one tool. I mean, and it's crazy too, if we really go off on this rabbit trail, is like it's free. Like I can literally go on my phone right now and I can post and thousands of people can see it for free. Like they've made platforms for that. It's absolutely absurd. And if you're on YouTube or certain platforms, they might pay you if you get a lot of views. And it's just it's crazy. So yeah, no, I mean it's everything nowadays. I mean, I think another example, we just saw like Cletus McFarland, a huge YouTuber. He's getting 3 nights in the Xfinity series. Like the team, teams are coming to people that can bring eyeballs because it's important. So yeah, best advice I could give to the kids coming up, you know, uh, create brand around yourself and create content. And just because too, you also because it is social media, you don't necessarily like for me. I'm genuine to who I am, which I feel like is a more like clean cut stand up. Like I try my best to represent all the people around me well, but if whatever your personality is, be authentic to that. And usually people love authenticity and that group of people will, come to you. So yeah, that would be my best advice. But yeah, social media is huge and if people think right now the world we're living in, imagine where it's going to be in 5 or 10 years. I think it's just going to be a completely different story. And all of our future generations, whether you like it or not, it's the world we're going to live in. So we have to kind of, grab the bull by the horns.
I couldn't think of a better person to run that question by than you because you have done such a good job. Tanner, I'm looking at my clock. It's already over an hour. I can't believe it. I thought we were like about 12 minutes in. So, um,
We by both like talking. We do both like talking, so it's good.
we're nudging each other out of the way. One thing I have learned is people don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from my guests. So, um, thank you so much for coming on. I know your schedule is super busy. Good luck down in Vegas and the rest of the year. And like I said, just thanks again for coming on.
For sure. No, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you at, many racetracks throughout the season.
All right. See you later, bud. All right. So that was some great stuff from Tanner Holmes. Definitely got to learn a lot about him. Like I said, the name of the game for him has been social media, and he's done it better than no others. Also does a heck of a job on the racetrack, too. So thanks again, Tanner, for coming in. Had a lot of fun with him. Thank you, everyone, also for tuning in this week. Enjoy having you along. Like I said in the beginning, if you can give me a follow, give me a share, give me a subscribe, that would be awesome. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. I will see you right back here next time.